As it often happens in science, mathematicians Nikhil Srivastava, Marcus and Daniel Spielman accidentally ended up solving a particularly challenging problem, vexing mathematicians since 1959. Working on an area called graph sparsification, they used methods of linear algebra. Quite fortuitously, they ended up solving what is known as the Kadison-Singer problem, which has a link to Paul Dirac, regarded as one of the greatest physicists of all time and among the pioneers of quantum theory in the late 1920s and early 1930s. Their work has won them the inaugural Ciprian Foias Prize given by the American Mathematical Society. Srivastava, who holds a doctorate in computer science, is an associate professor of mathematics at the University of California, Berkeley. This is the third prize for Dr. Srivastava, who had earlier jointly won the George Polya Prize in 2014 and the Held Prize in 2021. He spoke to Mayank Chhaya Reports from Mexico City, where he's on a break, to explain how he and his two colleagues ended up solving a more than 6 decades old problem whose existence they were not even aware of. Dr. Nikhil Srivastava. My primary interest has always been physics. My background is physics.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with that subject since my early teens. But mathematics is something that I've not really fully taken to, so this might be a bit of a challenge for me. So do excuse me.
Oh, well, it'll be an interesting challenge for me too. So I hope I can explain it.
Okay. First of all, many congratulations on your prize. It's a remarkable achievement.
Oh, thanks a lot, Mayank. Yeah, it's a great honor.
You began working on the Kadison-Singer problem along with Marcus and Daniel Spielman, right? When you were a third-year graduate student.
Exactly.
Tell me how the three of you came to choose a problem that's over 6 decades old.
I mean, it was kind of by accident. So, so Dan and I had been working on a different problem in graph theory since maybe 2006, called graph sparsification, which is, so a graph is just, it's like a network. And the problem was, how do you approximate networks, like let's say like a social network, for example, by networks that have very few links. So this is some graph theory type of problem. And we made some progress on this, and we solved it using some methods of linear algebra. So linear algebra is like study of linear equations, matrices, things like that. And there were some sort of possible further improvements to what we showed for this graph sparsification problem. And then it was pointed out to us by another colleague, Gil Kalai, that these improvements are actually equivalent to this Kadison-Singer problem.
Oh, I see. So it was fortuitous. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, but you were aware of the problem before that, right?
No, I was not.
Oh, really?
So we were like, okay, we were like, we want to make this. We want to prove this improved result for graph sparsification, and then, well, through this fortuitous conversation, we were like, oh, okay, this is equivalent to this other much older problem.
That sets me up perfectly for the next question. In solving the problem, in a sense, you have established a direct link to Paul Dirac, described as one of the greatest physicists of all time. How did you come? I mean, you already told me how you chanced upon the problem, but while you are at it, would you care to describe in as simple terms as you could for ordinary mind what it is that you solved?
Okay, so the connection to Dirac is a little bit indirect. So I can tell you what Dirac was interested in. So in physics, in any physical theory, one of the first questions you have to answer is, what does it even mean to describe the state of a physical system? Like, how do you parameterize the current state? So in classical mechanics, the answer to this is kind of what you would expect. Like, let's say you have a particle moving in space. Well, then the state, to describe the state, you simply write down the values of all of the observable quantities that you're interested in, let's say position and momentum. So the state is just, in principle, it's just in principle you can exactly measure all these quantities, and that's the state. But in quantum mechanics, there's new phenomenon, which is the uncertainty principle, which says that you cannot actually, even in principle, simultaneously measure all pairs of quantities. And so this question becomes kind of non-trivial, that, well, if you can't measure everything at the same time, how do you even, uniquely specify the state of a physical system? And so what Dirac wrote in his book was that what you should be able to do is find a large enough set of quantities that you can measure at the same time. These are called, compatible observables. So these are just quantities that do not have an uncertainty principle. And if you measure all of these, then that should uniquely determine everything else you could possibly measure, even if you can't actually measure it. So this was the proposed resolution of this problem. But then this, as a mathematical question, it's not obvious that you can do this.
Right. Now, see, that part I fully understood because you were talking physics. Let me come to the mathematics part. I don't mean to be facetious. I'm genuinely interested in what I'm about to ask you. I was going through a list of your papers on your website. Despite the fact that I have background in physics, I found every title of your paper beyond my personal comprehension. Now, as a mathematician, do you think you face the challenge of not being able to relate it to ordinary life? It becomes a bit esoteric.
So I should first say that I don't know much about physics.
Okay.
So you shouldn't feel like there's something lacking in your knowledge because
Okay.
there is this gap between mathematics and physics. Your question is about a gap between mathematics and real life, or explaining.
There isn't, but people don't. Let me cite you this. It says exponential lower bounds on spectrahedral representations of hyperbolicity cones. Now, I understand each word, what that means, but taken together, I'm not able to comprehend what's being said. That's just a small example of what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's part of just that mathematics is, I guess, it's become a very technical subject with many niches, and so there's this vocabulary in each subject that's very specialized, and even other mathematicians wouldn't necessarily understand the title.
I see.
What it really is about in sort of layperson terms is it's actually about something pretty concrete, that we have certain kinds of optimization algorithms that people use in computer science.
Right.
And the paper is about, is one such class of methods more powerful than another class?
I see. Okay.
But somehow to do this translation requires a little bit of work. And so,
sure, yeah. Your PhD is in computer science.
Yeah, it's in computer science.
And from there to stray into this whole problem, it's quite a leap, right?
Well, I don't know. It's a consequence of the unity of math in some ways. Like, the common thread is that quantum mechanics is written in the language of linear algebra, ultimately. Right. And so are all these other fields of computer science, engineering, and math. Like, this problem about graphs that I was working on ultimately is also something about linear algebra. And
right.
That's the connection. So in a way, it's just because linear algebra is such a central topic that it's connected to all these things. So it would be a leap for me to try to understand the entire surrounding physical landscape, which I admittedly have never tried to do. Right. But to actually, there's this very common mathematical structure. So it didn't require to learn too much other stuff.
Was mathematics always a part of your growing up, or you came to it gradually?
I always liked it. Actually, when I was a kid, I don't know, I had a sequence of, less and less ambitious goals. So I wanted to become an astronaut, and then I wanted to become a physicist, and then I, eventually became a mathematician. And it was, I mean, I was not like particularly great at math when I was a kid. I was a good student. I was fine. So I wasn't one of these people who was really steeped in it in any serious way. I think I really got into it because of some uh, mentoring in college, like some faculty members who really like showed me about mathematical research and things like that. So I always liked it, but
Early
wasn't
on,
ever.
where did you study?
You mean in school?
Yeah. Did you?
So
Sorry to interrupt. Did you go? Did you do early schooling in India?
so my father was a diplomat.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I did my very first schooling in Syria.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then we moved to India, and then a bunch of other places like the UK and the US and Saudi Arabia is where I went to high school.
That this wasn't part of my question, but the way you described it, how did that inform the way you looked at your career? Because it's quite a whirl of things that you were involved in, from Syria to UK to and so on. So,
I mean, it had an effect on my understanding of what I was good at, because especially when I moved into CBSE after going to American schools in ninth grade, I suddenly was not good at math anymore. I remember getting like 77 in math and being like, "Oh, what is this?" So it really did. It probably had some effect. I mean, at the end of high school, I thought I wanted to do computer science or some kind of engineering, maybe because that's what most of the people in my school were thinking about doing. But yeah, I mean, the most I do remember really feeling a change in my confidence in math when I moved between these different schooling systems.
As a mathematician, how do you know when you solve the problem? What is that? What is that thing that tells you this is it?
Oh, well, that's one of the nice things about math, which is that you have a proof. So usually the outcome is to prove a theorem, and the proof is just you type up the proof, and then of course you have to check that it's correct, but it's something that can in principle be checked mechanically. It's not some subjective thing. And so you check it a few times and you show it to your colleagues, you show it to other people, and
Right.
ultimately it is some kind of social process. They're like, yeah, this is correct.
Right.
So
in the specific context of the Kadison-Singer problem, when you arrived at the solution, was it? Describe to me the feeling. Did all three of you recognize that this is it, or one of you did? How did it work?
Well, so we had a series of developments that happened very quickly in the last few weeks, and the last piece was the last piece was put by my advisor Dan Spielman, and then we discussed it, and it was kind of obvious. Yeah, this is it. It was just so. I mean, it was in the end extremely simple, and my immediate reaction was to just start laughing, because it was just like, wow, like you can't make this stuff up. Like it's
That's
it was
amazing.
it was really cool. I mean, it was because it had this kind of it fit together really well, and it was very beautiful, and it was. I don't know why laughter was the reaction, but that's what it was.
Unlike in physics, where theories evolve over a period of time, in mathematics, it's my sense that once you have nailed the solution, that's it, it stays. Is that a right perception?
That's the right perception, yeah. So the correctness will stay forever. The relevance of it to physics is a different question, but once it's done, it's done. It's there. Its importance may vary over time.
Fair enough, but that's a fundamental difference between physics and mathematics. The evolution is, now that you've solved this, you move on to something else, right? Something entirely different, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, there are various things you could do. I mean, the natural things to do when you solve a problem are to explore the surrounding landscape. There are usually some nearby problems, and then, but yeah, this particular thing, there's not I mean, you can look for alternate proofs. So
Right.
again, when you prove a theorem, there could be many different proofs, and each proof gives you a different insight into why the
I
theorem
see.
is true. So in a way, the proof that we came up with, it's correct, and it's kind of cool, but it doesn't. In some ways, it's very mysterious, and there's
I
still.
see.
It would be nice to have a different proof.
Uh, now that this is out of the way, what next problem you're working on?
So I'm working on a bunch of things. I mean, the common thread in what I'm working on over the last several years is eigenvalues. So you can probably see that from looking at the titles of my
Right.
papers.
Right.
So I mean, so eigenvalues are this mathematical concept that's related to the physical concept of resonance,
Right.
resonant frequencies, and this occurs in physical reality, but also in many mathematical objects have their own resonant frequencies, and so that's the common thread in what I'm doing. And right now I'm working on some questions in pure math about eigenvalues of some some kind of relatively abstract objects that are of mainly of mathematical aesthetic interest, and also in some questions in applied math, such as how do you actually compute these resonant frequencies, like on a
Right.
computer. And that's it's actually not a settled question.
I see. I see. There has been a major debate in physics about whether it is necessary for a great equation to be aesthetically beautiful. A lot of people have been doing back and forth that if it's not exquisite, it is probably there is a problem somewhere. Where do you come down on a debate like that? Of course, it doesn't exist in mathematics because, like we discussed, when you solve it, you solved it.
I mean, it still kind of exists in mathematics. I mean, there is this, it's. I mean, it's not a. It's. There's this underlying feeling that beautiful mathematics is more likely to be, somehow deep and relevant in the future. I mean, I don't remember who it was. Was it maybe it was Hardy or somebody said that there's no permanent place for ugly mathematics, and in a way, I mean, it is. It's an aesthetically motivated subject, so this alignment between beauty and truth does come in math. But it's in physics it's even more striking, because then you do it's related to experiments and physical things you can measure out in the world. So I mean, I personally I mean, there are different styles of math, like everybody has their own style, but for me it is one of the most satisfying features that you take something very complicated. I mean, that's the whole point. You take something very complicated and you find a pattern in it which makes it simple. That's the satisfaction, that's the beauty. And
yeah. I mean, in a sense, mathematics is like any universal law of physics. For instance, gravity would work everywhere across the universe, just as 2 plus 2 will be 4 everywhere else in the universe. To that extent, there is some similarity, right?
Yeah, there's similarity, except I mean, gravity is still provisional. The status is not. The difference is that in physics, nothing is ever really absolute.
Yeah, I mentioned gravity because I'm in the middle of doing a book on that. And
okay, cool.
It's a subject which has obsessed me for a while, because to me, gravity is everything. If you and I are able to talk, it's entirely because of the way Earth's gravity is, right? So the way we have evolved physically, the way we are able to take out the sound. Anyway, so I digress. Have you ever wondered why Indians have a particular talent for mathematics?
Yeah, I mean,
it's a stereotype, but it's proven again and again.
I mean, the educational system, I think, has a lot to do with it. That the standards are relatively high, and it's encouraged. It's also at a social level, it's encouraged. It's cool to be good at math,
right.
And so people do it. There's a good I think there's a good environment, and it's valued culturally, and so enough people try it, and then the ones who are good receive support, and it's like in sports, I guess, that there's a good pipeline, certainly up to a certain level.
To go back a little bit, as a mathematician, how do you view the evolution of zero? For instance, as early as likely 628 AD. Brahmagupta, regarded in many ways as the foundational figure in inventing zero, wrote this, and I'm going to quote him: when zero is added to a number or subtracted from a number, the number remains unchanged, and the number multiplied by zero becomes zero. Now, that's an extraordinary insight for 1600 years ago. How do you, as a mathematician, wonder about that? Because it also comes down to the Buddhist concept of shunyata, or nothingness. It is nothingness, and yet it's everything. I'm curious to know how you look at something like zero.
I mean, I don't think about it too much these days, but I remember when I was in 5th grade, in Libya, in an Indian school, my teacher asked me, one of the homework questions was something like, why is I think it was, why can you not divide by zero?
Okay.
And I remember not really having a good answer to this, and so I asked my father, and I think he said something about the value being undefined, but I think that's, I mean, to me, that's somehow that's what's coming up. I don't. I think I'd be curious what framework this was discovered in 1600 in 600.
In fact, the debate is that it was invented before it came to India, either Cambodia or even Mesopotamia. I mean, it's a controversial thing. Indians would like, of course, in the current climate of nationalism, Indians would say we invented it, but there is some debate about where it originated. Although Indians, in fact, perfected the way it turned out to be. So a great deal of credit goes to India.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing that, I mean, because, I'm curious what the motivation was. Like, right in modern mathematics, zero is defined in abstract algebra. And if you trace it back, historically, the motivation is somehow to solve certain kinds of equations. I'm curious what the motivation was at that time to define it, especially in such axiomatic terms. That's what's really
that's extraordinary. I think you put your finger right there. I was curious about it, but I haven't come across too much literature on the specific aspect that you mentioned. Just last 2 or 3 things before I let you go. How would you describe the state of mathematics in India now?
I mean, I think it's pretty good. I think it's improving. Okay, so it depends on which level you ask this question at. So
no, at the level that you operate on.
Right. So for a while there was India has had some very strong mathematics departments for many decades.
Right.
For a while there was a trend of people doing their PhD and leaving the country, or leaving the country and then doing their PhD and staying away, like many Indian mathematicians. Because I don't know, I guess the working conditions were probably better abroad, but this is slowing down now. So I see a lot more people either staying in India or coming back to India. Part of it is probably just things like funding and salaries and things like that have improved.
Right.
And there's there's quite an effort to reduce this outflux of mathematicians of Indian mathematicians from India. So I mean, the top places in India are very good, like TIFR, ISC, and IITs and things like that. There's less sort of, it's still concentrated on a small number of places, is my impression.
Right.
It's not like in let's say in the US, where there's a very large number of departments which are quite active.
True. In terms of making a career out of mathematics, obviously not everyone can perform at the level that you perform. For an ordinary student of mathematics, do you think it's a career option which is rewarding in any sense of the word? If you're an ordinary person at mathematics who doesn't have the intellectual depth that you have, what does that person do?
Well, I mean, I really feel like I'm an ordinary person. Like I'm not a
No, fair
prodigy or
enough.
anything. So,
No, I mean,
but
I'm sure.
I mean, yeah, I think it's a very satisfying career, and I mean, the to your question, I mean, I think maybe a lot of people are afraid of doing it because they think they have to be like a genius or something to do it.
I see.
But it's not a race. I mean, sometimes in school when you're not as quick as others, you feel like you're not good at it. I mean, I've felt that way at various points, and so if you like it, like if you're willing to, if you really like doing it, then you should try it, because
Right.
I mean ultimately, if you do become a professional mathematician, it's a great lifestyle. It's very flexible. It's very curiosity driven. You get it's very free actually, and
Right.
the
Right.
teaching is also very rewarding. So I would encourage. The main question is, do you like it, and are you willing to put in the effort? Uh, so I would recommend it to everybody. I think it's a great job.
I see. To conclude, in terms of your other interests, I'm especially inclined to ask you about computer science and whether it's an inflection point in terms of either singularity or in terms of taking the next step in artificial intelligence. Where are we in your judgment?
Uh, you mean with regards to artificial intelligence?
And yeah, let's start with that because a great deal has been said, including by Stephen Hawking, the late Stephen Hawking, who was apparently against it in some ways because he thought that's an existential threat.
Yeah, my understanding is it's not near being an existential. Like artificial intelligence has become much better at doing certain kinds of uh, somewhat constrained tasks like translation, image recognition, etc., which are extremely important and which have already changed the world. Um, uh, I don't know if it's anywhere near the type of artificial intelligence that, like, we're afraid of machines taking over the world.
I
Uh,
see.
I mean, the main fear, I guess, that I've heard expressed and that I sort of agree with is that the way we interact with technology, we is through these feedback loops where we experience something online, and then some algorithm spits out
Right.
more things like that. So that's maybe something to be afraid of, but that's I don't know if that's what is that what Stephen Hawking was
Uh,
talking about?
Generally speaking, yes, there has been a movement where people are genuinely worried that we are perhaps playing with fire when we push it to this level. But anyway, like you said, it's early days still.
uh yeah, I mean, I don't know, some effects, like effects on the psychological health of
Yeah,
teenagers, are already visible. So
that's true. That's true.
so for things like
And
that, I don't know, sometimes I wonder if people are going to look back on this generation and see that it was kind
right,
of a mistake in some way,
I
but maybe
agree.
not. I don't know.
And to conclude, where are you on the question of whether we live in a simulation? We are a simulation.
Oh, I have a very operational view
Okay,
of philosophy generally, which is that, well, I mean, what tangible difference would it make if we were? So,
exactly. Yeah.
so I spent a lot of time, I think, thinking about these kind of things a long time ago, and then I don't know. So actually, what do people propose as the tangible difference that it would make?
That's true because we can never know what's outside that simulation, right? If we are simulated, we are not designed to look beyond that simulation.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of comes back to physics or quantum mechanics, which is everything is in terms of observable quantities, and if there are no observable quantities that can distinguish between a simulation and real life, then
True.
you know,
What difference
no.
does it make? I know.
So
Now, this has been terrific for me. I don't know about you, whether you liked it, but I thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. We will run the interview very soon. I'll send you all the links and my very best to you for anything that you do.
no, thanks a lot. I really enjoyed it too, Mayank, and yeah,
It
thanks for
was
inviting me.
perhaps too random, but I wanted to engage you like that.
No, I loved it. So
Thank you. And all the best, and enjoy Mexico.
Yeah, you too. I hope you recover
I
well.
will. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. All the best.